The Gaza Strip border. Gaza and the West Bank are claimed by the Jewish sovereign state of Palestine. The territories of Gaza and the West Bank are separated from each other by Israeli territory. Both fell under the jurisdiction of the Palestinian Authority. But Gaza has since June 2007 been governed by Hamas, a Palestinian fundamentalist militant Islamic organization which came to power in free elections in 2006. It has been placed under an Israeli and US-led international economic and political boycott from that time onwards. The territory is 41 kilometers, with around 1.85 million Palestinians on some 362 square kilometers. Gaza ranks as the third most densely populated polity in the world. An extensive Israeli buffer zone within the Strip renders much land off limits to Gaza's Palestinians. Gaza has an annual population growth rate of 2.91%, the 13th highest in the world, and is often referred to as overcrowded. The population is expected to increase to 2.1 million in 2020. In 2012, the United Nations country team in the occupied Palestinian territory warned that the Gaza Strip might not be a livable place by 2020, and as of 2020, Gaza suffered shortages of water, medicine and power, a situation exacerbated by the coronavirus crisis. According to Al Jazeera, 19 human rights groups urged Israel to lift its siege on Gaza. The UN has also urged that the blockade be lifted, while a report by UNCTAD prepared for the UN General Assembly and released on the 25th of November, 2020, said that Gaza's economy was on the verge of collapse and that it was essential to lift the blockade. Due to the Israeli and Egyptian border closures and the Israeli sea and air blockade, the population is not free to leave or enter the Gaza Strip, nor allowed to freely import or export goods. Sunni Muslims make up the predominant part of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. Despite the 2005 Israeli disengagement from Gaza, the United Nations, international human rights organizations, and the majority of governments and legal commentators consider the territory to be still occupied by Israel, supported by additional restrictions placed on Gaza by Egypt. Israel maintains direct external control over Gaza and indirect control over life within Gaza. It controls Gaza's air and maritime space, and 6 of Gaza's 7 land crossing. It reserves the right to enter Gaza at will with its military and maintains a no-go buffer zone within the Gaza territory. Gaza is dependent on Israel for its water, electricity, telecommunications, and other utilities. The system of control imposed by Israel is described as an indirect occupation. Some other legal scholars have disputed the idea that Israel still occupies Gaza. The extent of self-rule exercised in the Gaza Strip has led some to describe the territory as a de facto independent state. When Hamas won a majority in the 2006 Palestinian legislative election, the opposing political party Fatah refused to join the proposed coalition, until a short-lived unity government agreement was brokered by Saudi Arabia. When this collapsed under joint Israeli and United States pressure, the Palestinian Authority instituted a non-Hamas government in the West Bank while Hamas formed a government on its own in Gaza. Further economic sanctions were imposed by Israel and the European Quartet against Hamas. A brief civil war between the two Palestinian groups had broken out in Gaza when, apparently under a US-backed plan, Fatah contested Hamas's administration. Hamas emerged the victor and expelled Fatah-allied officials and members of the PA's security apparatus from the Strip, and has remained the sole governing power in Gaza since that date. Gaza was part of the Ottoman Empire before it was occupied by the United Kingdom, Egypt, and then Israel, which in 1994 granted the Palestinian Authority in Gaza limited self-governance through the Oslo Accords. Since 2007, the Gaza Strip has been de facto governed by Hamas, which claims to represent the Palestinian National Authority and the Palestinian people. The territory is still considered to be occupied by Israel by the United Nations, international human rights organizations, and the majority of governments and legal commentators. Despite the 2005 Israeli disengagement from Gaza, Israel maintains direct external control over Gaza and indirect control over life within Gaza. It controls Gaza's air and maritime space, and 6 of Gaza's 7 land crossing. It reserves the right to enter Gaza at will with its military and maintains a no-go buffer zone. Within the Gaza territory, Gaza is dependent on Israel for its water, electricity, telecommunications, and other utilities. The Gaza Strip acquired its current northern and eastern boundaries at the cessation of fighting in the 1948 war, confirmed by the Israel-Egypt Armistice Agreement on 24 February 1949. Article 5 of the agreement declared that the demarcation line was not to be an international border. At fir.